50 is the new 40. When I started in this business 30 years ago, we couldn't present to a board a CEO candidate that was over about 55. We just couldn't
Right.
do it. That's not something you talked about, right? But you just couldn't do it. Today, I wouldn't blink an eye.
Hi, I'm Renata Bernardi, and this is the Job Hunting Podcast, where I interview experts and professionals and discuss issues that are important for job hunters and those who are working to advance their careers. So make sure that you subscribe and follow, and let's dive right in. Today, I'm joined on the podcast by two very experienced recruiters, Neill Marshall, board chair and co-founder of HealthSearch Partners, and Kurt Mosley, the firm's association's practice leader. Renowned healthcare workforce strategies, these two are. They only recruit senior executives working in healthcare. Even though this is mostly healthcare related, their experience, it can be translated to senior executive recruitment in every industry. Healthcare Partners is based in the US. It was launched to specialize in healthcare leadership recruitment. So they have a signature search process that emphasizes values alignment and cultural fit, which led both of them to be very focused on supporting the new recruits into their first 90 days. They created a series called The First 90 Days, which has a collection of insights from top leaders and provides insight on how executives need to hit the ground running on those first 90 days. We start discussing first 90 days, and then we move into leadership styles post pandemic, what you need to do to remain employable as you get older and you're seeking out leadership roles in your 50s and 60s and beyond. In this conversation, my goal was to get Neill and Kurt to explore what leaders have to prioritize in order to get employed and to succeed in their roles. So if you're interested in first 90 days, let's say you just got a job or you're getting ready to get a job and you want to hit the ground running, and succeed. So this episode is for you. If you are looking for senior executive roles, this episode is for you. But if you're also in the future ambitious for your career and you want to have a sneak peek and an understanding of how senior executive recruiters operate, how they think, their mindset, then please listen to this episode. In addition, I will list below in the episode show notes and on my blog some interesting articles that you might be willing to explore. There's an article from Forbes from June 25, How Great Leaders Win Teams Over in Their First 90 Days. I found this really interesting and I have sent it to some of my clients. There are two Harvard Business Review articles that I am recommending. One is The First 90 Days Updated and Expanded, and the other one is What Effective CEOs Do After the First 90 Days. And this is a brand new article, so I think it's worth reading. There's one from McKinsey. It really isn't about the first 90 days. So I think that is important as well. We discussed this with Kurt and Neill, this idea that you may not be able to action all of the things you promised in your interviews because you need to go into listening mode. This can take longer than 100 days and 90 days and so forth. So please have a look at the links below if you're interested in articles to read. You can listen to this podcast on Spotify, on Apple, on Amazon, and you can watch it on YouTube if you're interested in, seeing what we look like and where we are, and having our faces as you explore the ideas that we're sharing. Remember to subscribe to this podcast, and if you want to help us a little bit more, give us a like, a thumbs up, write a review. It really helps us reach out to other interesting listeners like yourself. Thank you so much for listening. Here is Kurt and Neill for you. We're here to talk about recruitment. And I'm here with two experts. And we love having people like both of you on the podcast because it adds so much color and richness to the conversation. And these are conversations that individual job candidates would never be able to have because um, usually when you're job seeking by yourself. You're lucky if you get an interview. You're even luckier if you have time with a recruiter of your caliber. So thank you so much for reaching out. Um, the Job Hunting podcast is listened mostly in the US, even though it's recorded here in Australia. That's not surprising. Australia is a big country with a small population. So
Sure.
Sure.
we do have a loyal listenership here, but most of my listeners are from the US. And personally, as a career coach, I have lots of clients in health services, medtech, pharma, which is really surprising to me. I didn't expect that when I started coaching, but they are from all over the world. So UK, Singapore, parts of Asia, Australia.
Hmm.
Melbourne has a big pharma industry here, a big hub here in Australia, and of course the US all over from San Diego to Boston. So really interesting to have both of you here because I find that my clients do reflect my audience. So be interesting to see who we reach out to. Most particularly, I'm interested to learn more about your interest in the first 90 days. How did you begin identifying the first 90 days as a critical inflection point for the executives that you were placing? Who wants to start? Maybe Neill?
Yeah. I think as two things happened. First, I had a candidate, a placement who um, who stubbed their toe in the first 90 days, and it was really bad. And I started really looking at that. The second thing, frankly, was Kurt and I were interviewing a guy by the name of Richard Parks, CEO of a huge hospital system in Lubbock, Texas, 22 hospitals, 5 billion in revenue. It was huge. And he said, "Well, Neill, when I start a new job, uh, I move out there. Mama stays home and sells the house and moves the family, and then I move into the hospital." And I said, Richard, I know everybody works hard the first couple of months. He said, "No, Neill, I move into the hospital and I live there for 3 months." And he said, "The things that I learned by moving into the hospital are amazing." He said the first time when I did it in Lubbock, the very first morning, the residents, because he stays in like a dorm where all the residents are, right, on
Mhm.
campus. And uh, like old people do, I asked the residents, "Hey, how did you sleep?" And one of them said, "I slept horribly. The mattresses here are horrible." And Richard said, "You know what? I can fix that." And
Yeah,
he called the VP of facilities and got all new mattresses that day. And Kurt and I were hooked from then
yeah,
on. Uh,
yeah. Kurt, is that your experience as well? What do you have to add?
Well, I think we started this mainly because there's such a high turnover rate in healthcare executives here in the United States. Many of our healthcare executives have been through quite a career change. I mean, I think a lot of them say the last 4 years was the last 30 years of their life because of COVID and everything that's happening. And according to American College of Healthcare Executives, our turnover rate is the highest it's been in years because a lot of our executives now are saying, I toughed it out through COVID. I got through this. We just had an election. I don't know if you've heard. It's a
Yeah,
joke, but things are changing. And a lot of them just said, I put in my 25 years and we're changing. And there's high amount of CEO turnover rate. So we we kind of got hooked on this because it was like so many CEOs were changing careers. People were moving up. We had people also going into second careers. Most importantly, Renata, we had people unretiring, coming out. So they were saying, it's been 5 years. What do I do now? It's a different world. For example, I used to play football, but how do I get back in the game? So that was really our episodes for actually trying to put this together. And the information we've gathered from our CEOs has just been invaluable. Their input and the stories they tell are just, we're happy to share those with you today.
Yeah. And Kurt, do you think that the biggest differentiator between those that stay the course and are successful, both on a personal level by not burning out and on a external level by influencing the strategy of the business, is the biggest differentiator the first 90 days? Can you tell that people will stumble right at the beginning?
Well, it's sort of in the first 90 days, it's really the basis for their career. And a lot of people, they take these defining actions, Renata, and these actions in their first 90 days really set the tone for their whole career there. And people always say the first 90 days, but it's not just the first 90 days, it's really the blueprint and foundation for long-term success. It really is. And it's their actions, and we can get into those stories. If it's their actions and how they start and what people expect of them. And we always like to look at this as opposed to having a 90-day exit interview as a 90-day stay interview. Like, how are things going the first 90 days? So we don't have to have that, 6 month, it's just not working out. So again, it really sets the tone. And I always liken it to the fact it's, the first day of the rest day of your career. Yes, it's important because everybody's looking to you, especially in the CEO position.
Okay. Neill, besides moving into the dorms with the residents, what are some of the things that you see or you believe work when you're working with these leaders that they can do in the first 90 days to really stand out?
The first thing is to decide the tone that you want to set, and then make symbolic actions and do symbolic things in order to heighten that tone. I think that's a big one. I had one of our guys said that he built his 90-day plan, and then he had all of his subordinates build a 90-day plan. And then they merged the plans and they talked amongst each other and made sure that all the plans were congruent moving forward. And they did that every 90 days. I thought that was good.
Mm-hmm. The thing that is of concern to a lot of executives moving into organizations is balancing the need for action, usually when they are appointed by boards or investors. There is a lot of promises made. But as they walk in, they need to do a lot of listening. So balancing the listening and the understanding, taking that information up to a board level before you action during that initial period is a really difficult balancing act, as they're trying to show performance, but they are also trying to show that they will co-design things with others, that they will incorporate what their team has seen on the ground even before they walked in. Have you found that this is a difficult balance for the executives you've worked with?
Yeah, it is. And I guess what we caution is if you're going to make a big move in the first 90 days, it better be the right move. Because if it's not, I know one executive just recently that decided one of his subordinates was not going to cut it and fired that person in the first 30 days. What he had no idea was that this person was beloved in the organization, knew everybody, and it caused ripples so impactful that this person did not make it. He got fired about 2 weeks after he fired his subordinate.
Yeah, that's a good. That leads me to asking both of you more specific questions about leadership, right? So I know that the expertise in the room today is hospitals, and I think that what can be translated to other sectors and industry is the diversity of the teams and the employees in a hospital environment that can mimic the diversity in mining or a big factory and so forth. What sort of leadership do you think is needed for somebody to work with that diversity of employees to optimize service to the public? Kurt, maybe let's start with you.
Sure. Well, I'd like to kind of continue on your last question too and transition. But in that first 90 days, we've heard our executives tell us as to expand on what Neill said, to make the right decision. And boards are always saying, you answer to the board. In hospitals, you answer to the medical staff. That's a big part of it. Years ago, I used to do a presentation. It was called "Doctors Are from Mars, Administrators from Venus," and it was about the whole, the whole friction, if you were there. But I think it's really important that when you get into a new position, urgency is part of the job. The boards are expecting things, but time-sensitive decisions, teams are looking to you for direction. But moving too fast, and especially without clarity, really, really confuses your new employees. And sometimes it undermines the strategy. There's a basketball coach who passed away, UCLA, John Wooden. He had one of the most amazing careers in college basketball. And he always had a quote, and I love to use this, but he said, "Be quick, but don't hurry." And that's really important, I think, in anybody getting into a new position, because speed without context leads to, hasty decisions. It'll also undermine what you're trying to do. Also, people making decisions too quickly, I think it shows insecurity, because, somebody's trying to prove themselves in their new job. And, especially if you're a CEO, your demeanor and how you're acting sets the tone for the whole organization.
Yeah. Has the leadership changed post-pandemic in style? What do you think?
That's an interesting one. In healthcare specifically, and our business and our work is in hospitals mostly. That the C-suite always talked about how important people were, and now they really talk about how important their people are. Because he who retains and attracts wins in this environment. Because if you can't hold your people, there aren't thousands of people waiting to take their place. There's no one waiting to take their place.
Yeah. What do you think, Kurt?
Well, I think post-pandemic, I think doctors in the hospitals and the administration have gone closer. We have a lot of doctors now assuming the roles of CEOs in their new jobs. So there used to be a wall, if you will, between the two. It was like, that's the doctor's division, that's the administration position. But I've seen them work closer now, more closer than ever, because there's such cost constraints on what's going on. In America, we face, sadly, from a health standpoint, we have majority of our population has two comorbidities, and it's just our population is not as healthy as it can be. So we see more and more administrators and doctors working together and seeing the results the same, as opposed to working from opposite sides of the fence. There's not that silo anymore. Everybody seems to be working together toward the common goal is how do we take care of our patient population? How do we remain profitable? How do we make payroll? And most importantly, how do we try to make this population better up front, as opposed to sick care, as opposed to well care?
Is there a an ideal tenure for a CEO to remain?
That's a good one.
I saw an article, I think both of you posted on LinkedIn recently about the tenure sort of accelerating, like people, the turnover accelerating at CEO level. I wondered if you think that that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, I think that there can be a time where a CEO's message no longer is being accepted. Does that mean it's a year into it, 5 years into it? I don't know, right? But there comes a time where it might be time to move on. And so some turnover, I think, is good. You want your CEO to be there long enough to have actually done something, right? And the reality is it takes 3 or 4 years to accomplish some of these really strong strategic goals. Um, so I think most boards would be happy to get really strong 6 to 7 to 8 years out of somebody.
Mm, yeah. What's your view, Kurt?
I think we're seeing people looking. There's no time, as Neill said, but I think people are looking for fresh faces. In America, our healthcare system, uh, almost on a daily basis in the news, is how do we fix our healthcare system? Because nobody would design the system we have here in America today. It was sort of, put together piecemeal, if you will, over the last 30 to 45 years. So a lot of people are looking for people coming outside of the industry to come in and say, how do we fix it? What have you done in your industry? How did that industry grow so fast? How did AI capture the market? How did the auto industry change? So they're looking to people outside of that to really help get some fresh faces and redesign our healthcare system. Because again, it's I don't want to besmirch it, but it's broken and it needs to be fixed. And we're looking to see how do we take care of this population. This majority of them need additional health care. How do we do that? And it may be somebody coming from outside the industry. So again, fresh faces, it's good in the industry. I think it always is. It always shakes it up. And you see it all the time in our sports analogies where the team's doing fine, but they bring in a new coach just because there's a different point of view and there's just somebody different and some different ideas. So I think it's good, but again, there's really no time frame for it. But people are looking now to other people outside of the industry. We've never seen that over the last 10 years.
Okay. What I have noticed with some of my clients that are very senior is that some of them have lost their long-term jobs just before the pandemic or during the pandemic and have since done 1 year consulting jobs and stints and have been unable to gain tenure again since 2021, 2022. I'm currently working with a client here in Australia that has that situation. 27 years in the same organization, and then 5 lots of, consulting jobs, contracts since then. Um, does that um, is that a problem when they are looking for full-time roles again? Does it raises red flags for you if somebody comes with a chopped recent a list of recent appointments?
I think they're going to have a tough time competing. Okay, but that doesn't mean it's over. What I tell folks that have that is go find the next one and make it and stretch it out as long as you can so that people are now coming to you again. So you're there 2 years, and by the time you're there 2 years, we as recruiters, as executive search consultants, will be after you again. Then you can make the move or start making the move, and maybe you'll go 3 this time. and then go 3 the next, and then you're back, fine.
Yeah.
But it's gonna make it harder to compete, which means you need to have a better network. You need to work the people that you've worked with in the past, people who know you, people who are willing to gamble because they know you.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Um, with the market the way that it is now, we're in July 2025. Um, how is the ratio for each of the jobs that you advertise? Are you getting, very good high quality applications, too many to go through, or you are working with a niche that means that things are still equalized between supply and demand of jobs and candidates?
Yeah, because of the niche that we're in, I don't know that we could ever say these are the number of people that applied or anything like that, because we're going after them. Um, but if it's a good opportunity, and especially if it's in a good place, there are plenty of people who are going to look and be interested. It's our job to find the right ones,
Hmm.
right? Um, but at our level, yes, we're seeing there are plenty of people. I've had folks tell me part of the problem is that um, you know 50 is the new 40, or 40 is the new 50, and 50 is the new 60, right?
Mhm.
People are staying around longer and longer and longer.
Oh,
Um,
okay. So 40 is the new 50. So it's the other
yeah,
way
40 is
around.
yeah, you're right. My apologies. 40 is the right, and
Yeah.
so um, I mean, when I started in this business 30 years ago, we couldn't present to a board a CEO candidate that was over about 55. We just couldn't
Right.
do it. That's not something you talked about, right? But you just couldn't do it. Today, I wouldn't blink an eye. I
Mm.
wouldn't blink an eye. Um, as a matter of fact, I was talking to a physician executive. Physician executives tend to run a little older, because they've done not only their med school and their residency, but then a clinical practice, right? So they run a little bit older. But I was interviewing this guy, and I realized, wow, he's real senior. I said, how old are you? He said, I'm 83. I said, what are you doing interviewing for a new job? Come on, 83.
Yes. Oh,
Well,
wow.
and I also
Kurt,
think
what do
it's
you think?
I also think it's our population in America has had a dramatic shift. I mean, for the first time ever last year, we have more people 60 and older in America than we do 17 and younger. So, as Neill said, there's a lot of good people in that 55 to 60 range just because that's what they're stacking up. Now, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, people want fresh faces, but our dynamic is, we're an older country, and we have to look to the people we have here for our workforce. So I think people are more open to that. People are working longer, as you said, and we're doing so well now. There, people that over the 60, can still, a lot of people, as Neil said, you talk to them, you look at them, you don't know what age they are because they act just, my grandmother used to always say this. She said, "How old would you be if you didn't know how old you were?" So I think a lot of our executives are taking that under advisement and just saying, "Listen, this is what I want to do." So again, our dynamics changing here in America, and that needs to, when we're looking at candidates, we need to take that in consideration.
Okay. That is wonderful news for my listeners and my clients. Most of my clients are 100% over 40, but I have clients in their 50s and 60.
Uh,
My oldest client is 71. So there you
Renata, I
go.
will tell you that I tell when they start apologizing, when they say, "Is this?" And I'm like, listen, it again, it's not the way it was. It
Mm,
truly isn't.
mm. And how should how should an older client who is stepping into new leadership roles, how should they prepare to have encounters with you, to have interviews for these jobs? Is it somewhat different from the younger, less experienced, more dynamic candidates? Do you have different expectations from somebody that has more experience under their belts?
Well, yeah. I mean, you expect that they have. I'll give you a dumb example. I had a guy that he sent me his resume. He's 30 years in the business, and it was one page, like 3-point font, one page. I said, "What are you doing?" I said, if you can put your career on one page, you haven't done enough. Okay, so expand that, and so yeah, we're expecting them to have a lot of accomplishments under their belt, right?
Hmm.
Uh, but even more importantly, if you're a more senior executive, you do things like you don't talk about how old you are. You don't talk about um, the grandchildren. You talk about AI. Okay, you talk about things that are young. I'll tell people all the time. What's your hobby? Um, and if they say I do this, 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 and this, and I work out, if they're senior, I say you work out number one.
Hmm.
That's the first thing you talk about. And you don't talk about and you spiff up your wardrobe. Anything less than about 3 or 4 years old does not get worn.
Yeah.
You need to look good. You need to to look younger, if you will. Do everything you can to polish yourself up.
Okay, great. Um,
And
Talking
Renata,
about
if I could add,
polishing up. Yes, Kurt, please go
no,
ahead.
no, no, I'm sorry. They should approach things differently too. I think when they're
Yeah.
because they've done it in the past, and not to brag about it, but they've done it. But we always caution them, to know stories about how you did it in the past or how we did it 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And as Neill said, I really like that point where he said you talk about AI because that's on everybody's lips now. So, you know, get up with the times. But again, show confidence because you've done it before. Don't be, overconfident, but show that you've done it before. Act like it, and at the same time, you know, talk about what your new role is going to be, not what you did the last 20 years.
Hmm. Okay. There, I agree. Um, Talking about all of that and polishing up and being, with the times, I'm assuming that being on LinkedIn, I see both of you are very active on LinkedIn, is important. But I'm more curious overall, how do you find them? Because Neill, you mentioned that a couple of times that you will find them. Are you using LinkedIn or is it your network?
A little bit of both. I mean, we've been in the business for 30 years. We have our own proprietary database, right? Um, but I will also be if I'm doing something that's very specific and narrow. Yes, I would absolutely go on LinkedIn. And Renata, I am shocked at the number of people who don't have a picture, don't have an updated picture, and haven't done a there's almost nothing there. And I think, how could you not want somebody calling you about a huge position, even if
Mm.
you're happy? That's, I had one person who griped a little bit one time about me calling them, and I said, look, I said, when you need to worry is when I stop calling.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. It's
And
interesting.
I think LinkedIn is very important. I just ran an article about a month ago about our healthcare cuts in America, which you hear about every day. And new policy was called "When the Scalpel Cuts Too Deep." And I had people that I hadn't talked to in 15 years, come, "Hey, buddy, how you doing?" And it was like, people I've been trying to get a hold of. But I think it's a way to get out there without without really selling, the opportunity. It's just that you understand the industry, you're knowledgeable about it, you're taking a position, you're taking a stance on things, and it's most importantly, Renata, it starts a conversation, and that's where you go from there. I mean, that's how we find a lot of people like that. And I'm very lucky too. I'm a national speaker, and I get to speak in front of our hospital associations and our medical societies. And I get a lot of leads to that. People come up afterwards and say, "Not at this meeting, but here's my card, and we talk on Tuesday." Of course. So.
Oh, good, good. Are you still meeting with candidates? Because some recruiters have told me that they don't have time anymore to meet with candidates. Neill, you're laughing.
Well,
Both laughing.
let me tell you, yes, depending on the level, but yes, absolutely. Video is good, but it's not great.
Hmm.
Um, I went from, having all of my introductory interactions via telephone to 10 years ago switching that, and all introductory is done via video. So there are no more introductory phone calls. I don't call anybody and say, "Hey, have you thought about this job? Let me send you the specs and we'll talk again." It's like this first, and then after that, if it's a high enough level, then yes, we'll go sit down. I I can't get everything I need unless I can be right in front of them.
Yeah, I get it.
AI has helped, Renata, but
Okay.
body language is very important, especially when you meet somebody. If they're one of the top two candidates we're presenting, yes, you just how they act, how did they fidget, their demeanor, their eye contact, and that's something that Zoom really can't interpret through that. So um, I think it's still very important because that's your reputation is who you're presenting to your client when you present that candidate. And if it's something that you're unaware of, and maybe their appearance, maybe anything, you just never know. So it's really important to have that, especially if the client says, "I'm interested in that," and you can caution them on, "Well, this is in my face-to-face interview. This is what I encountered." Full disclosure, if you will.
Mm, okay. Are you with that first stage of interviewing when you have the conversations, I'm assuming via Zoom or via Teams, are you sort of cutting out the candidates that struggle with the technology? Because I still have issues with my
Boy, I
clients struggling.
I try not to.
Yeah.
I try not to, but I gotta tell you today, uh, yeah, you've got to be able to do that. If it, yeah, as much as I don't want to, yes, you do because
Yeah.
you have to be able to do this.
It's quite interesting and generationally seeing the difference that, my generation and above, I'm an X, um, will struggle with technology from time to time. And then the younger clients I see struggle with the phone calls. They just do not pick up the phone and they will not call anybody. They just
Right.
don't use the phone for calling, which is quite bizarre for me. Yeah.
That's
Well,
my children. I don't think I've ever gotten a phone call from my children. It's either a FaceTime or a text, or they
Yeah.
show up.
I had a situation where a young hire, and I was talking to the client, and I said, "How's the new hire doing?" And they said, "Well, uh, communication's lacking." I said, "Well, they're doing a good job." And he said, "Absolutely." And he was a younger person. He was uh, just past Gen Xer, and this was a baby boomer I was talking to. And he said he won't answer my emails. And I said, "Oh." And I said, "Did you text him?" He goes, "No, I emailed him." And I said, "Did you text him?" And he texted him right in front of me. And 15 seconds later, he got a text back. So I said, "There's your
There you
answer."
go. Yes. Yeah, and I think part of my coaching includes people understanding that a reach out via LinkedIn, for example, is okay. Just last night, I was with somebody who could very well be a great candidate for you, a client of mine, and he was like, "I always worry when they reach out to me via LinkedIn," and I'm like, "Why do you worry?" And he said, "I don't know, it's just weird," and I'm like, "Well." That's how they can reach
It's
out
not.
to you. And it
It's
was a
not.
very high profile global executive search firm. I'm not going to name names here,
Right.
but I'm like,
No.
you don't have to worry. They really want to talk to you.
No,
Reply
right.
to them.
Yeah, you have to because that
Yeah.
may be the only way to do it. And you know, I've been out recently, and I probably reached out to 100 or 150 people on LinkedIn for $1 million job. Okay, but it's
Wow.
not a group of people that that I know that will, you know, that I've got their cell numbers that I can text or whatever. And I've reached out via LinkedIn. And interestingly, an awful lot of people responded positively. I had a couple that thought that it might be a fake, you know, and I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you. Um,
Yeah.
but most were okay with it.
Are there, this is a question for both of you about LinkedIn because I see you both are active on LinkedIn. Neill, you mentioned before not having photos and not having a lot there being a problem. And I agree with that. But is there something that people do on their LinkedIn profiles of our activity that give you the ick? Like you go, no, I'm not going to reach out to this candidate. I think it would be interesting um, to help listeners understand what you think is not appropriate to be on LinkedIn.
So I can't think of anything that's an ick factor. I will tell you that you need to be just as accurate on LinkedIn as anywhere else. Okay, you need to be accurate because it won't hurt you until it hurts you.
Yeah.
So no embellishing, you know, if you have if you have this degree, you have this degree. Either you have it or you don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Kurt.
I think photos, you know, and I don't know why, but a lot of them just, there's a professional photo and there's not a professional photo. A shortened bio, if you can't read it in 30 seconds, why do it? And then elongated work history. I get it if you've been at the industry like I have for 35 years, but be precise and to the point. And probably you don't need to go back to your third or fourth job because people want to know they're on LinkedIn. I got 30 seconds. Does this make any sense for me to talk to this person further? So concise bio, shortened work history, and an accurate professional picture.
Okay. Okay. That will help. Do you have any final advice for the listeners who are looking for senior executive roles at the moment? Or any roles, really? Kurt, let's start with
Yes.
you.
Yeah, sure. I was just thinking that was a good question. Um, I think most importantly is to know what you want. First of all, people always say, we talk to people about the first 30 seconds. People say, well, I'm open to anything. Well, that's vague is not very good. It really isn't. As you know, here's what I want. Here's my career goal. Here's where I see me fitting into your organization. Um, and really, when you're doing the initial interview, because I always talk about it as a first date, but be precise. Don't use a lot of isms, if you will. Like uh, I want something that's part of the corporate culture. Well, you better be able to find what corporate culture means to you and what it means to that company. So people are throwing out a lot of buzzwords nowadays. The granular is a big one. So that's be precise and step out and say this is what I want. This is how I feel I can fit in your organization. Vague doesn't work either. It really doesn't. I mean, I think it's very, you know, I know we were talking to a client that said we do a lot of work with face based, clients here in America, and they said, "Are you okay with face based?" And they said, "Yeah, I'm okay with it." Well, it probably just meant they don't know what that means and what it's like to work in that environment. So, be honest with yourself first before you go out, and people can tell if you're confident or not. We all know it. So. Neill?
Yes. I really like what you mentioned about buzzwords and the corporate lingo. I will record an episode, a solo episode addressing this because
You
Kurt,
ought
you
to.
mentioned short bios and how to present yourself on LinkedIn. I'm about to work with a client. I check their LinkedIn profile and I cannot figure out what they do because it's all
Ah,
buzzwords. Like,
right, right,
right? So
right.
it's really important. Just the other day, I was prospecting a client from Los Angeles. She booked a discovery call with me, and it was only when I spoke to her that I got what she did because I felt that there was too many buzzwords in on the LinkedIn profile. And even though I could tap into things and understand a little bit more, it was still I still don't have that time. It's a prospecting call, and I'm in a hurry. Neill,
I
what do
had a
you think?
client, I had a candidate one time who was a consultant, and I was interviewing him. And every time he used a buzzword, I stopped him and I asked him to tell me what that means because I need to understand. And finally, after about the 10th or 12th time, I stopped him and asked him to define. He got frustrated and left. I mean, he was like, "I'm done with this." Um, but that was
Yeah,
about him not understanding that you have to be able to communicate in a language that everybody understands. It would be like if you spoke Chinese and I'm trying to talk to
mm,
you in English. That doesn't do you any good. If you, I've got to be able to speak your language.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, it's part of the homework for my clients. They need to explain what they do to a 5-year-old. And if
Exactly.
they can't do that, then we have a problem.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that and thank you for doing that because you're exactly right. And I
Yeah.
get it. You get into a company culture and you have a certain way of speaking, but you need to learn how to speak like everybody else to be able to explain it like everybody else.
All right. Well, Kurt and Neil, it was wonderful having you here on the podcast. Thank you so much for making the time to talk to me and to all of my listeners. And I hope some of my listeners will reach out to you as clients or candidates, and we'll start a new and refreshing, as you mentioned before, conversations with you for your the roles that you advertise. So thank you so much for being in touch.
Thank you very much. It was great being with you today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I enjoyed meeting you and enjoyed speaking with you.